And then Rebele Leboham Mampe is the committee coordinator. Kiena Atusanang Lebabang from the legislature to organize these meetings. And let me also take the opportunity to welcome the officials from the Department of Environment and Fisheries from the National Department. Leading. Okay, and also from the NCOP, those who represent the NCOP, if Baliteng, and from the department, Batsongo department, and from the legal. Okay, so everybody is represented here. We will have a successful meeting where we will be able to deliberate mabaka a climate change. Akere ra tseba hore climate change these days ke tlhoba boroko. Akere ba holo. Yes, and it should be a concern ya rona kaofela, not only ya government. Re pele ke thoma ka setlwaedi ke declare this venue as a precinct of the legislature. Because normally re tshwara di meetings tsa rona ko legislature, but today because re mo re tla itse gore holo e ke legislature ya rona akere. So ke tlo declare before we can start with the business of the day. Nna ka lebitso ke Refilwe Kekana. I'm the chairperson of the portfolio committee ya agriculture, rural development and the environment. And I hereby declare Naledi Community Hall here in Soweto, City of Johannesburg, as the precinct of the Gauteng Provincial Legislature in terms of Rule 56, subsection 1-2 of the standing rules of the Gauteng Legislature, version 5, revision 8, which is read together with section 2, subsection 1, and section 28 of the powers, privileges and immunities of Parliament and Provincial Legislature Act number 4 of 2004. So therefore, for the duration of this meeting, this place will be the precinct of the Gauteng Provincial Legislature, and therefore the standing rules of the legislature will apply and it will govern all our engagements for the day. So the expectation is that whenever you want to speak, you raise your hand and you get acknowledged. Again, you don't just talk and howl. So go ba le molao, tsela e tshwantseng re bolele ka yona. And the other thing, go na le di gadgets. These gadgets, they are interpreter. So you listen, Olivia, over your ears. And then the channels are as follows. For English, you'll press channel 1. For Africans, get channel 2. For isiZulu, leSixhosa, get channel 3. Sesotho leSepedi, get channel 4. And Chivenda leChitonga, channel 5. And then there'll also be sign language. So whoever gets the opportunity to speak, you can speak in any of the languages o comfortable ka yona. Whether o bua Sepedi or Setswana or Setsonga, we will be able to hear you because there's interpretation. Ha re use di gadgets. But ke tlo kopa hore ha re feditse ka tsona after the meeting, di gadgets tse a di sebetse ko hae or anywhere else. We leave them behind. And then interpretation, batla di tseya beke because ke tsa bona. And we are live on Facebook and YouTube. So there are people who are streaming from outside who are observing the proceedings. Unfortunately, they can't input, but they will be part of the proceedings. And we've also invited written submissions. And then Lona, you will do your verbal submissions. But should any of you want to make written submissions, Lona baleleng ka moholong, because probably we won't get an opportunity to speak, all of us. Those of you who want to make written submissions, you can still do written submissions la di tlisa mo tafoleng, so that the views tsa lena di be incorporated in the bill. Us as the legislature, mosebetsi wa rona ke ho conduct a public participation. And we play a crucial role ha re determine the bills, so that we give you, the public or the stakeholders, an opportunity to participate in the thinking or in the formulation of this bill before eba molao o leng hore President o tla o signa into law. So we take your inputs very seriously, because eke government ya lona. So it says, we normally say that the people shall govern. And indeed, this is your opportunity to govern. Share your inputs so that they can be taken and incorporated in the bill. So we take your valuable participation very seriously as the legislature, especially as this portfolio committee. As we proceed, I'll come to the purpose of this meeting. Ke hore, like I said, our duty is to conduct public participation. So we are here to engage you, the public, on the process who consider the climate change bill. It's a bill B9B of 2022. It's a section 76 bill. Along the provinces, and thereafter all the provinces are having such meetings, and the inputs from all the provinces in our country will be incorporated. And the objective of the public hearings is to enable the public, yourselves, the stakeholders, and all interested parties to make inputs through verbal and written submissions for consideration during the deliberations on the bill. And in accordance with Section 114 and Section 118 of the Constitution of the Republic of South Africa, it stipulates that a legislature should involve the public in the legislative work undertaken by these institutions, including the decision-making process. So this is just an emphasis of what I was saying earlier. Kere, Luna, you are the people, you are also governing, therefore your decision-making process must involve you or include you. So without any further waste of time, I will just outline the agenda, honorable members, where we will have a presentation. The first presentation we will receive from the NCOP unit, by the legal advisor, Me Musima Kekana. If Uteng, Elebo, am I correct? No, so we're gonna skip the legal processing of the bill, okay? Therefore, then we will, the first presentation will therefore be by the National Department of Forestry, Fisheries and the Environment. And the responsible official will introduce himself, and the presentation will be beamed for you to see. He will take us through the presentation, and then he will be followed by the presentation on the views of the executive. So this will be done by the Gauteng Department of Agriculture and Rural Development, and I think the relevant presenters are here. They will introduce themselves. Haba is a presentation. Thereafter, it will be your turn, our stakeholders, for inputs and discussions. And like I said, you can make your verbal input or a written submission. And thereafter, I will allow members of the portfolio committee to also input and ask questions if they've got any clarity-seeking questions based on the presentations. And thereafter, after everything is said and done, we will have the department coming back to clarify all the issues that you would have raised. If go na le di-question, ba tla araba di-question. If go na le se tshwantseng a se tlhalose gore re utlwisisane, o tla se tlhalosa ka bokopana. So what we are going to do, ke tlo le kopa hore ha e tla part eo ya hore le tse di-input, you must focus on the subject at hand. What would have been presented to yourself. Discover all over the place. Wa fumana hore re bolela ka dio tse ding tse leng hore they are not relevant, they are not going to assist the shaping of this bill. So ke a ikopela bagolo hore a re beng focused re dile ka dilo tsa climate change today. Le lo re na le a mang mathata, but suppress them, but focus on climate change issues. And then thereafter we will have announcements. And I think we will be reaching the end of our meeting. It shouldn't take that long. If we are efficient and we don't take long when we make our inputs, by 2:30, we should be done with our meeting. So, honorable members, there's the agenda as tabled. I don't think that we need to adopt it. Yeah, it's just for noting. So without any further waste of time, I will then call on the presenter from the National Department of Forestry, Fisheries and the Environment to take the podium and take us through the presentation. O tla introduce, o tla re bolella hore ke ena mang and o sebetsa go etsang in the department. Over to you. Thank you very much.
Molweni. Ndazi noba uyavakala. Oh. Ndiyavakala. Can you hear me now? Molweni. Igama lam ndinguSibusiso Kobese. I'm from the National Department of Forestry, Fisheries and Environment. Thank you, Chair, Honorable Chair, for the opportunity. Maybe I must first also greet the honorable members, the community leaders that are here, and all the members of the community. My role is to take you through the climate change bill. Within the department, I'm from the Directorate Law Reform. My presentation is a bit long, but I'll try to run through it, but try to emphasize the key points for the benefit of everyone. In terms of the presentation outline, my presentation will touch on the purpose and objects of the bill, the principles of the bill, the key definitions, processing of the bill by the Portfolio Committee, some key amendments that were made on the bill by the Portfolio Committee, policy alignment and institutional arrangements, climate change response, looking at the role of provinces and municipalities, national adaptation to the impacts of climate change, sector adaptation to the impacts of climate change, as well as greenhouse gas emissions and removals. So that's how my presentation is structured. Then in terms of the purpose of the bill is been developed in order to enable the development of an effective national climate change response and a long-term just transition to a low-carbon and climate-resilient economy and society within the context of sustainable development. So that's, in brief, that is the purpose of the bill. In terms of the objects of the bill has quite a number of objects. I'm hoping that we have a copy of the bill before you. But for the purposes of this presentation, I will just summarize a few points around the objects. I won't really go through each object of the bill. The bill seeks to provide a coordinated and integrated response by the economy and society to climate change and its impacts in accordance with the principles of cooperative governance. So that's one of the key principles. But the one that I wanted to emphasize more is that the bill seeks to ensure that there is just transition to a low carbon economy and society, considering the national circumstances. What this means is that as a country, as we move away from carbon intensive activities or economy or system, we must not leave anyone behind. So we must take everyone along as we transition to the new regime that we seek to create through this bill. What that means is that as we move away, for example, from coal, the use of coal, and other carbon-intensive activities, we must make sure that we protect the jobs, especially for the coal and we create new jobs going forward. We must restore our natural systems and build resilience. Our systems should be resilient, must be able to withstand the impacts of climate change. So that's one of the key objectives of the bill. If you look at the principles, the bill has quite elaborate principles. I think it has about 12 principles that are outlined in one of the clauses. I won't really go through each of the principles, save to emphasize that this bill will fall under the umbrella legislation, the National Environmental Management Act, what we call in short NEMA. NEMA is a framework legislation and umbrella legislation that applies across the country. So it also has some subordinate legislation, what we call the specific environmental management acts, your Biodiversity Act, Air Quality Act, Waste Act. So all those smaller acts fall under the bigger umbrella legislation called NEMA. So this bill as well will fit into that system and will be regarded as a SEMA, a Specific Environmental Management Act. So therefore, all the principles that are in Section 2 of NEMA will apply similarly to this bill. Another key principle is that the climate system should be protected for the benefit of current and future generations, or generations of humankind. This principle is linked to Section 24 of the Constitution, which enjoins government to put in place legislative measures to safeguard the environment for the benefit of the current and future generations. Another key principle, maybe the last one, is that the bill acknowledges that international equity and each country's common but differentiated responsibilities and capabilities. What this means in simple terms is that, as you may know, the world is not equal. There is the first world countries who have historically contributed more to emissions. When they were developing their countries to be first, to be where they are today, to be regarded as first world countries, they emitted more emissions. So therefore, what this principle means is that those countries, those first world countries, must, in the same token, contribute more in all the efforts that are being undertaken now to try to eliminate or to reduce emissions and therefore deal with all the issues of climate change. So all the first world countries must then play a bigger role and assist the developing or the underdeveloped or developing countries to fight climate change. So those are the few principles I wanted to highlight. In terms of the key definitions, also here I won't really go through each definition. The bill has quite a number of definitions. I think there's about 50 definitions if you go through the bill. So it will take me almost an hour to go through each definition. So I'll just maybe take the definitions as read. safe to just maybe highlight one key definition, that of the term nationally determined contribution, which means the contributions determined and prepared in terms of Article 4.2 of the Paris Agreement and submitted by the Republic to the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. Colleagues, as we may all know, we have what we call the Paris Agreement, which is an agreement amongst nations on how to deal with all the issues relating to climate change. So the nationally determined contribution is basically each country's commitment to the reduction of emissions and dealing with climate change. So each country that is signed up to the Paris Agreement has made a commitment, which commitments are called nationally determined contributions. So the NDCs are at the heart of the Paris Agreement, and as I said, it's about each country committing, making commitments to say over time, this is how we are going to deal with climate change. These are the steps and measures that we are going to put in place as a country to deal with all the issues of climate change. Then the next part will be the processing of the bill by the Portfolio Committee. This bill has long been in the making. It was introduced for tabling in Parliament in 2018, so it's been a couple of years since the bill has been in the system. But then to fast forward, the bill at around 2022 was processed by the Portfolio Committee. The Portfolio Committee conducted public hearings, both physical and virtual sessions across the country. We were available to assist the committee in all the hearings. The committee I think it was targeting 3 districts in each province. So we were assisting the committee, the Portfolio Committee, in all that work. So from those hearings, the committee then generated the comments. It received about 101 substantive written submissions on the bill and 1,001 composite emails from a campaign called Dear South Africa. So all those comments were consolidated. An A-list was developed of proposed amendments. The committee deliberated and adopted and made amendments to the bill. After that, the committee adopted the bill and referred it to the National Council of Provinces, that is the Select Committee. The Select Committee then further referred the bill to all the provincial legislatures. That's why you are here today, to then get the Gauteng people's input on the bill. So that's the process that's been followed by the Portfolio Committee. So in the next few slides, I think it's just 3 slides, I'll just summarize the amendments that were made on the bill by the Portfolio Committee, so that as you make your own inputs on the bill, you are aware that the bill, in fact, is quite improved from the version that was initially introduced for tabling back in 2018. So the bill is quite improved. The version you're looking at is quite an improved version. So in terms of a summary of the amendments made by the Portfolio Committee, the first one was on the definitions. The Portfolio Committee inserted the definitions of the terms national greenhouse gas emissions profile, PFMA, and resilience. So those are some of the terms that were added by the Portfolio Committee to the bill. On clause 3, the committee substituted the word physically challenged for the wording persons with disabilities. It was felt that the wording persons with disabilities is a more universally accepted wording, so that's why it was then inserted. Clause 7, it was also editorial input where the committee inserted the wording laws and traditional leaders and other stakeholders. On clause 10, In fact, on this one, I must emphasize that this was one of the, how do I put it, one of the, I don't want to call controversial, but one of the provisions that received most attention from the public. In fact, all the provisions relating or clauses relating to the Presidential Climate Commission were receiving greater attention from the public, and those have been revised substantively. Clause 10 deals with the establishment of the Presidential Climate Commission. The older version of the bill, or maybe I must start by saying the commission currently exists, but then its existence is based on a cabinet directive. So it's not really established in terms of a dedicated legislation. It exists based on a cabinet directive. So what this bill does is to formalize the establishment of the commission by stating that the existing commission will then continue to exist in terms of this bill. That commission will then be listed in terms of the Schedule 3 of the Public Finance Management Act as an independent entity with its own legal personality, with the ability to sue and be sued. The bill provides for appointment of 25 commissioners who will sit on that commission. The previous version didn't really prescribe the number, but now the Portfolio Committee felt that they should cap the number at 25 commissioners who will be appointed by the president. The president will chair the commission and is also enabled to appoint a deputy chairperson. The term of office of the commissioners is now prescribed. It was not prescribed in the older version. The commissioners will serve 5 years, an initial term of 5 years, renewable once for a final term of 5 years. Members of parliament and provincial legislatures are not eligible for appointment as commissioners. That was done to ensure that there's no conflict of interest. The commission is now enabled to make its own rules, procedures, and code of conduct. Another key clause that was added by the Portfolio Committee is addition of a function of the commission to say the commission will then advise government on any socio-economic matter related to the just transition. The committee now is enabled to also create committees. Those committees will then assist the commission in fulfilling its mandate. The process of appointment of commissioners is clearly outlined now. It was not in the older version. There will be an open and transparent process. A call for nomination of commissioners will be put out in the Gazette and national and local newspapers, so the general public will have an opportunity to make nominations, to nominate people who can serve as commissioners. Issues of remuneration of commissioners as well as their role is clarified in the bill. The bill now provides for appointment of an executive director who will be the accounting authority or accounting head of the commission. The Portfolio Committee inserted a clause to provide for financial administration of the commission. That clause was not there in the older version. What that clause says is that the commission will be funded by parliamentary appropriations, donations, and the like, but the commission is enabled to develop a fundraising strategy, which will then assist the commission in ensuring that it has all the necessary resources and funds to run its operations. On reporting, the bill now emphasizes that there must be transparency. All the reports of the commission must be submitted to Parliament, so the commission accounts to Parliament, directly to Parliament, but in doing so, it can then copy the other impacted departments. If a specific department is impacted by a specific report, then that department may just be copied. But what is key is that all the reports of the Commission must be published on the Commission's website so that they are available to the public, to the general public. The bill now provides for the appointment of the Secretariat to the Commission, as well as the publication of the necessary reports. There's also emphasis on timeframes. The bill was not really clear in terms of timeframes, but that has now been clarified. Where we're using the word may, now we're using a more stronger wording must. So all those editorial changes were made. Another key change made by the Portfolio Committee is the insertion of an empowering provision for minister to prescribe support and finance mechanisms. This input came strongly from the municipalities when we were going around the country. They were saying it won't make sense to just give them powers without the necessary support, financial support or otherwise. So that's why that provision was inserted to say minister will prescribe a support and funding mechanism so that all the municipalities, all the spheres of government at different levels are supported financially and otherwise. On clause 27, which deals with regulations, some of the key regulations that will be developed will be tabled in Parliament. The Portfolio Committee felt that some of the regulations are key, especially those relating to the funding mechanisms. They cannot just be left to the executive, but the executive will develop those regulations and table them in Parliament for adoption. If you look at the older version of the bill, it had maybe a two-liner offenses and penalties provision. But the current version you have now, I think we've reworked it a bit, and it's more substantive. So the offenses and penalties provision has been improved. On Schedule 2, that Schedule 2 contains a list of functionaries that will be responsible for development or setting of emission targets. So the input from the public was that that list is not really, is limited. So the proposals for us to add education, cooperative governance, traditional affairs, technology, and tourism. So those are now added in the bill. So in summary, those are the changes that were effected or made by the Portfolio Committee to the bill or on the bill. Then the next item will be policy alignment and institutional arrangements. What this slide basically says is that as government, we have existing structures, especially at provincial and local level. Therefore, in terms of institutional arrangements, let's not create new structures necessarily, but make use of the existing structures. So it basically says, let's not reinvent the wheel, but look at existing structures and see how those can better assist us with the climate change considerations. So that slide basically says the existing premier intergovernmental forums and every district intergovernmental forum that exists now in terms of the Intergovernmental Relations Framework Act, those forums must serve as forums on climate change. Those forums are already empowered by the Intergovernmental Relations Framework Act to create technical structures. So those technical structures must also serve as forums or structures to deal with all the climate change considerations. So that's basically what that slide says, to say let's not reinvent the wheel, but make use of the existing structures. Still on institutional arrangements, this slide talks to the Climate Commission, which I spoke to in some detail. So I won't really repeat the content of the slide, other than to emphasize that the Commission will be an independent, impartial, and a legal entity with full legal capacity, listed in terms of Schedule 3 of the PFMA. it will have a fair representation of all the sectors of society. It will be represented by people from government, business, labor, civil society, traditional leadership, and SALGA as well, the South African Local Government Association. The next slide talks about the functions of the commission. The functions of the commission are mainly advisory. So it will maybe conduct research on certain aspects related to climate change and advise government or make recommendations for consideration by government. The role of commissioners as well is clarified to say commissioners are also there to advise or make recommendations on all the climate change aspects, including climate change response, mitigation, adaptation approaches, and the like. Then, in terms of the role of provinces and municipalities, what the bill says is that within the prescribed time frame, I think it says within 1 year after promulgation of the Act, all provinces and municipalities must conduct what is called climate change needs assessment. This is because the impacts of climate change are different, or provinces are impacted differently. For example, in the Northern Cape, they are affected mostly by heat waves, but in KZN, there's flooding. In other provinces, the impacts are different. So once the Act is in place, within 1 year of promulgation of the Act, each province or municipality must do a province-specific needs assessment. Once that is done, then the province or municipality must then develop what we call response implementation plans to then detail how they will then address their needs, their province-specific needs. Those plans must be integrated within the IDPs of the municipalities. Once then that system is put in place by the provinces and municipalities, they will then be able to tap into that support and finance mechanism that minister will prescribe. I don't think a municipality will be able to tap into those resources if it hasn't followed this process of conducting the province-specific needs assessment, developing the response plans, integrating those plans into the IDPs of the municipalities. So that's what is expected from provinces. At a national level, minister, in consultation with with cabinet and the relevant ministries, minister within the prescribed time frame, the Act has many time frames. I think on this one it says within a year or two. Minister will then determine national adaptation objectives for the whole country. Those objectives will then be supported by indicators. The indicators will assist in measuring our performance in pursuing the objectives that were set by minister. Minister will then develop adaptation scenarios to anticipate the likely impacts of climate change. It's more of a forecast to say maybe based on our experience, past experiences, and scientific evidence, this is what we see happening in the next 5 to 10 years, so that we can plan properly. So all those objectives and adaptation scenarios must be publicly available. They must be gazetted. So that's the role of minister at a national level. Minister will then develop a national adaptation strategy and plan for the whole country. Once the national adaptation strategy and plan is gazetted, the next slide, which talks to sector adaptation to impact, says, flowing from the national adaptation strategy and plan, each department or sector departments are, for example, your department the department dealing with the transport sector, mining, agriculture. So all those sector departments will then develop sector-specific national adaptation strategies and plans, taking cue from the national strategy and plan that would have been gazetted by the minister. So they are required to review those sector-specific strategies and plan every 5 years, and where feasible, in consultation with all the stakeholders, amend or review those plans. They are also required to report on progress regarding implementation of those plans. Those reports must be submitted to minister. Once minister receives those reports, minister will then compile and synthesize the information and develop what is called a synthesis adaptation report and submit that report to cabinet. Once that report is adopted or approved by cabinet, then it can be used by the country in our interactions with the entire world, especially within the United Nations system. In terms of greenhouse gas emissions and removals, what this slide says is that minister will, within the prescribed time frame, in consultation with the cabinet and relevant ministries, determine a national greenhouse gas emissions trajectory for the country. A trajectory is basically more of a determination of where the country is going. But to the extent that the trajectory is not yet determined, then the nationally determined contribution will serve as a trajectory. So all the minister will then publish a list of greenhouse gas emitting sectors and subsectors, and prescribe a framework for determination of sectoral emission targets. So ministers responsible for each sector or subsector must then put in place policies and measures towards achievement of the sectoral emission targets that would have been set by the minister. Then they must also report on the progress made towards the meeting those or utilization of the sector emission targets. Minister, in the same token, will be required to synthesize that information and prepare a report for submission to cabinet around the sector emission targets. In terms of listed greenhouse gas and activities, minister will publish a list of greenhouse gases which the minister reasonably believes will cause or are likely to cause or exacerbate climate change. So once that list is out, any person who is then engaged in activities, in the listed activities, will be subjected to the carbon budgets. Minister will allocate a carbon budget to any person who, as I said, is involved with the listed activities. Each person will then must prepare and submit to the minister a greenhouse gas mitigation plan. So basically, carbon budget is more of a cap to say you may be involved in this activity, but you cannot emit emissions above a certain threshold. So those are carbon budget. If you exceed the threshold, then there will be penalties in the form of more taxes or carbon tax, but those will be regulated under the Carbon Tax Act, which falls under the Ministry of Finance. Then what this slide also emphasizes is that the current approved pollution prevention plans in terms of the Air Quality Act will be deemed to be the greenhouse gas mitigation plans. This is to ensure that the smooth transitioning to the new regime once the act is promulgated, and to ensure that there's proper migration into the Climate Change Act regime. Minister will then is enabled to review the allocated carbon budget at the end of every 5-year carbon budget commitment period, or as required by the person to whom a carbon budget is allocated. Then the last slide, Chair, is on the phasing out or phasing down of synthetic greenhouse gases. So Minister will consult with all the affected ministries, sector ministers or subsectors, and declare by notice in a gazette synthetic gases. So there's certain gases that we've declared as synthetic. So in that declaration, Minister will specify the conditions for the phasing down or phasing out of those gases over time. Minister will also determine the caps, the thresholds for use of those gases, and the time frames for phasing out or phasing down of those gases. Minister is also enabled to impose carbon budgets for those declared synthetic gases. And the last point, Chair, is that Minister will then establish an institutional arrangement to facilitate a national system of data collection for creation of a national greenhouse gas inventory, what will be called a national greenhouse gas inventory report, which will then be published annually. That is the last slide, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sharmo Bele Matsoho. Ra leboga for the presentation. Ke a tshepa bagolo gore re tlhoile tsebe, and you will make your notes so that ka nako e fitlang when you are supposed to make inputs, you are able to make inputs. But safe to say that we know gore this conversation ya climate change ke khale e thomile. The important thing is how countries adapt to the changes in climate change. How responsive do countries become to the effects of climate change? Because global warming is a problem. So we need to have a way of adapting, and that's why these bills are on a regular basis being improved so that we can deal with the situation at hand. There was a Kyoto Protocol, the Paris Agreement you mentioned, and every year there's a COP something. I think the last one was COP28, where global leaders meet to discuss the impact of climate change and the mitigation strategies for climate change. And we all know that Ridula Modi Maspaling, all of us. And if there's a disaster, the municipalities are mostly affected and impacted. If only the floods, to alternative accommodation and all that. Disaster management must be functional. Therefore, it's important that the municipalities, like he said, also come on board. They are being brought on board so that they know how to react in terms of disasters in their local municipalities. So thank you very much for the inputs. The clauses exist. Like I said, we are always seeking to improve these bills so that they be comprehensive. We will then move on to the next presentation by the department. I don't know who's going to give the presentation, but the relevant person will introduce her, and so that our stakeholders can have a global picture of the subject at hand. But before department presenter, let me mention the following stakeholders which were invited to this session. I want this to be on record that we have invited the Federation for a Sustainable Environment. I hope they are here, or there is a representative, Yabone. Wildlife and Environment Society of South Africa, Food and Trees for Africa, Eco Hope, Weeds and Seeds Farm from Midval, African Climate Reality Project, the African Climate Alliance, Food for Mzansi, the traditional leaders, COCTA, AFASA, NAFU, which is the National African Farmers Union, LESANBI, South African National Biodiversity Institute, Yabofelo ke Agris SA. All these organizations have been invited, and some of them have made written submissions, and those that have not made written submissions, if they are here, they will make their verbal submissions. But if we have not received them today, Lebo, I hope that the window of opportunity will still be there for them to submit their inputs to the portfolio committee. And I think the closing date for the submissions is on the 22nd of March. So if they have not yet made their inputs, by the 22nd of March, they must have made their submissions. So thank you very much, and over to you, Department.
Thank you very much, Chair. Greetings to the honorable members of the Portfolio Committee, and greetings to everyone. My name is Gerson Netabani from the Gauteng Department of Agriculture, Rural Development and Environment. So I will be giving the perspective of the executive with regards to the bill. What does the Gauteng provincial government say about the bill that the colleague from the DFFE just presented to you, and what are some of the initiatives that are already on the ground with regards to the implementation of the said bill. Next slide, please. So as you can see on your screens, as the chair has already indicated, climate change is indeed taking place. And according to the International Panel on Climate Change, the 6th assessment in 2022, the global greenhouse gas emissions have continued to rise, but these emissions must peak in the next 3 years to preserve the world's chance of meeting the Paris Agreement goal. And there is no room for building new fossil fuel infrastructure that have serious carbon dioxide emissions, but there is a need for us as the global world, as the global village, to embark on renewable energy infrastructure that does not lead to the emission of greenhouse gas emissions. And carbon removal will need to play a very important role for us as the world to be able to limit warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius. You can go to the next slide. Now, climate change is not only a risk at an international level, it's also a risk in our province. The climate projections that have been confirmed by the long-term adaptation scenarios have indicated that the overall outcome for our province indicate that our climate is likely to be hotter overall, with higher temperatures and longer dry spells dominating our weather patterns. I'm sure most of us have seen, are familiar with the diagrams that have been shown on the screen, issues of floods, issues of drought, intense rainfalls events have also been projected for our province, and this will lead to increase in terms of runoff rather than infiltration. And there will also be a risk for flash floods and erosion, placing enormous pressure in our infrastructure. Accompanying this is increased temperature, which is leading to heat stress. I'm sure most of us can attest to the fact that in the past 2 weeks, it has been very hot. And these are some of the issues that are being attributed to climate change. In addition to that, deepened drought conditions are projected, and this will impact on water security and also increase fire risks within our province. Now, at the very same time in our province is very much industrial in nature. We've got many industries in our province and therefore contribute heavily in terms of release of greenhouse gas into the atmosphere. Next slide, please. Now, as the department, we are in support of the bill that was presented by my colleague from the DFFE, and from the next few slides that will be shown, it will be very evident to you that we have already gone ahead and undertake certain initiatives in response to the bill, in response to the effects of climate change that are facing us in our province. Now, everything that we do in our province with respect to response to climate change is guided by the Gauteng City Region Overarching Climate Change Response Strategy and Action Plan. This is the plan that we developed as the province, and it was approved by the Provincial Exco on the 26th of August 2020. Now, this plan is very much aligned to the climate change bill that was presented here. And the plan that we have developed, it supports the country's commitment to meet the Paris Agreement pledges, as well as the national determined contribution that my colleague spoke about. So our plan is in support of the bill, and it strives to meet our commitments in terms of climate change response. Now, in the plan has outlined 11 key response programs which represent various sectors of our economy within the Gauteng City region. Now, on every response plan, as you can see on the screen, we have prioritized certain interventions that will enable that specific sector to respond accordingly to the effects of climate change. For instance, in terms of agriculture, we have prioritized as the province sustainable and climate resilient agriculture, as well as agro-processing and improved food security. In terms of natural resources, the main aim is to improve climate resilience through restoration of degraded areas and tree planting, invasive alien vegetation control, as well as the protection of climate change corridors. I'm sure you have seen our department has been going around municipalities with the initiative of planting trees, particularly in informal settlements, in townships, which are areas which are most vulnerable to the effects of climate change. In terms of industry and mining, we have prioritized investment in cleaner production processes, transport. The focus is on the investment in terms of integrated transport systems, such as Rea Vaya, such as the Gauteng and the Metro Bus. This initiative help us because we are encouraging people from using their private cars, because if all of us use our private cars, it means we are contributing heavily in terms of contributing to climate change. Energy supply, we have prioritized implementation of solar energy generation projects in the province. Water supply, we are encouraging reuse of secondary water sources such as rainwater and stormwater. Commercial buildings, we have prioritized rollout of renewable energy in public infrastructure. And to this end, our sister department, Department of Infrastructure Development, has rolled out various programs that are aiming at introducing renewable energy in public infrastructure such as clinics, hospitals, and schools. In terms of human settlement, we need to support the development of smart cities and smart human settlements in our province. Waste management, we've got various programs aimed at waste avoidance, recycling, reduction, reuse, as well as strengthening regulatory framework. The last sector that has been highlighted there is disaster risk reduction and management, where we have prioritized improving the capacity to respond to disasters, particularly in municipalities. Next slide. Now, one of the provisions of the bill, as my colleague has already indicated, is the fact that a provincial committee on climate change must be established for each province in the Republic in order to coordinate climate change response actions in the relevant province. We have already gone ahead and fulfilled this provision through the establishment of premiers Expert Advisory Committee on Climate Change, which was launched by Premier on the 1st of June 2022 to strategically monitor and report on the progress of provincial climate change response programs. It consists of various experts in the field of energy, water, infrastructure, finance, as well as other key sectors of our economy. Now, the specific objectives of this committee is to guide and accelerate the implementation of the climate change strategy, the plan that I spoke about in the previous slides. We are also to ensure that we provide, through this committee, we provide expert advice on just transition pathway for the province. In addition to the Premier's Expert Advisory Committee on Climate Change, we also have various structures that have been established which are aimed at climate change response in the province. We have the Climate Change Forum, which was established back in 2015, which brings together on a quarterly basis provincial and municipal officials so that we can be able to track progress with regards to climate change response in our province. Now, this forum also enable us to be able to coordinate and liaise with the private sector because they have a very key role to play in terms of climate change response. Next slide. Now, to enable us as the department and as the province to be able to fully implement the strategy that we have developed, we have established various strategic alliances with different institutions at a global level, at a national level, as well as at a local level to enable us to be able to respond accordingly to the effects of climate change. Number one, we have established alliance with Under 2 Coalition, which is an international body which brings together sub-national governments or provinces or local governments, and they provide technical advice and inputs with regards to the work that we are doing on climate change. We have also established alliances with institutions such as Green Building Council of South Africa, University of Johannesburg, Regions 4, that assist us with climate change adaptation programs. In addition to that, we meet on a regular basis with private sector so that we can be able to sit together and find solutions on how to respond accordingly to climate change in the province. This includes SASOL, National Business Initiative, Gauteng, Development Bank of Southern Africa, Baldwin Properties, and the Green Building Council of South Africa, as well as the South African Petroleum Industry Association. Next slide. Now, this is a snapshot of some of the programs that we are implementing within the province to be able to respond to climate change. They include, as I've already alluded to, solar installation of solar PV at public facilities, which is being championed by the Gauteng Department of Infrastructure Development, the replacement of coal-fired boilers with dual-fired boilers in hospitals, which use light fuel, oil and gas, again is being championed by DID together with the Department of Health. The department which I represent, the Gauteng Department of Agriculture, Rural Development and Environment, is implementing all the various programs there, from the Gauteng 2015 Net Zero Guidelines, Climate Change School Awareness Program, where we go to the schools and educate learners so that we increase their knowledge on climate change and what is expected of them, as well as the surrounding communities in terms of contributing to the response of climate change. We have also developed the Carlsprade Climate Resilient Catchment Management Plan to improve climate resilience in one of the catchments within the Gauteng, which runs through your Tembisa Centurion area. We are also in the process of developing the Gauteng greenhouse gas inventory so that we can be able to be in a position that to know the amount of greenhouse gas emissions that we are contributing as the province of Gauteng. We also have the Gauteng Industrial Symbiosis Program, which is aimed at reduction of the waste that is going to our landfills, where companies change byproducts to ensure that we do not generate excessive waste within our province, amongst other things. We also have a program aimed at planting 1 million trees so that we increase climate resilience, particularly in the vulnerable communities in our province. We also have a program where we train SMMEs in terms of solar PV installation so that they can embark on programs that will contribute to the mitigation agenda in the province. Lastly, we have farmer support program where we encourage farmers to utilize renewable energy in their operations. Next slide. Now, I will not dwell much on this slide because my colleague has already touched on it in terms of the purpose and the objectives of the bill. I think safe to say that we support the bill as the provincial government. Next slide. I think you can skip the next. You can skip it as well. Yeah, you can pause here. So, in terms of what is expected of the provinces and municipalities in terms of the bill, the colleague that just presented here indicated that at least within 1 year of the publication of the bill, of the publication of the National Adaptation Strategy and Plan, as contemplated in Section 18, there's a need to undertake a climate needs and response assessment for the province, metropolitan or district municipality. And at least within 2 years of undertaking the climate change needs assessment and response assessment contemplated in the above bullet point, there's also a need to develop, implement, and publish this in the Gazette. Now, as a province, we have already gone ahead to comply with the with the conditions that have been stated above, in the sense that we have developed the climate change strategy in the province, where we undertook climate change vulnerability assessment, where we assessed how our communities are vulnerable to the effects of climate change. And to this end, we have developed a map which depicts very clearly which sections of our province are most vulnerable to the effects of climate change. And we have already gone ahead and developed the action plan so that it can be implemented by different sectors in the province to increase climate resilience. Next slide. Now, as a conclusion, as the department, we welcome the bill, and as a matter of fact, as I've stated, we have gone ahead and start with implementing certain aspects of the bill. And we also stand prepared to assist the Gauteng municipalities in planning and implementation in the spirit of the IGR and Chapter 3 of the Constitution that looks at cooperative governance. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you very much, Sharamofem Matsoho. A bigger round hand of applause. Thank you for the presentation. Lekwele Baholo, the Department ya Gauteng Environment, Agriculture and Rural Development supports the bill. And batlahisitse hape le what they are planning to do as a department to contribute to the mitigation strategies. And Rona, our duty as the portfolio committee is to ensure that we hold the department accountable on what they had said they would do in terms of their contribution towards climate change. The implementation plan as well as the strategic decisions. So as a portfolio committee, we will now and again ask them, in terms of climate change on this aspect, how far are you? How many trees have you managed to plant? You have said, look, planted 200 trees within a certain time. Have you done so? And so on. But then just to highlight this issue, Baholo Hore, climate change, e batla di efforts tsa rona kaofela, including yourselves as community members. And it's very important that we also educate ourselves as to the little contribution we can make as individuals in our household towards mitigating against climate change, in terms of how we dispose our waste, the issue of cutting of trees. Many people barata ho kata ditlhare, they don't understand the importance of the trees, hore di hoha carbon dioxide, di ntsha oxygen, di re fa fresh air. So people cut trees not knowing hore they are messing up with the environment. So we need to gradually educate ourselves in terms of these issues of climate change, because we want to leave this world in a better place for future generations. We don't want hore he when our generation is wiped off, the next generation ya batho ba thole lefatshe le leng hore they can produce molona, they can't even farm, they can't do anything. A hona metsi, a hona this and this, and then they are flooded with a disaster. So it requires the efforts of all of us, the international community, various governments, business, municipalities, provincial governments, as well as us, the citizens, so that we make sure that we take care of our environment. So without any further waste of time, I'm going to invite inputs from yourselves or comments in terms of the bill, and also welcome our stakeholders. I see they've just arrived. You are welcome. Ke tla starta on this side, on my left-hand side. I will take hands. If I appoint you, you just come to the front, avoid the brain wave, so that we stick to time and we become relevant. So I'll note hands, and those that I've noted, ba tla tla ka mo pele, ba bue, and then ha ke fetsa ka left, ke tla tla ka mo right. So I'll start on this side. If you can just raise your hands if you've got anything to contribute. Emisa letsogo. Mama, 1, 2, I've noted 2, 3 hands. Le papa mo, you can come to the front. 4, yes, I've noted you, Ugatlama. I've noted 4 hands this side. So please come to the front. Thank you very much. You can just introduce yourself and then make your input.
Thank you very much, Chair. My name is Tepsin Tsewane. I'm a farmer in Sidibeng. Chairperson, thank you for the invite. We really appreciate this inclusion. It shows that our government is inclusive of even a layman like myself. Also, we want to acknowledge and appreciate the 2 presentations. One, Chair, is to go to the commission itself. Commissions are being formulated, and a commission is being established, Chair, but only to find that most commissions are not representative enough. They look at your qualifications, for instance, the standard of education, whether you have a master's, a doctorate, yet climate change affects all of us. And you may find that we're now on a master's degree because you know you are less affected. And a person that is sitting down there is more affected. I will cite an example, Chair. Currently, we are feeling climate change as farmers. I mean, if you go to my farm, it's like it is already June when you look at my maize. it has changed color drastically so. It is becoming dry. And to me, it's like, what's going on? How am I going to go out of this harsh situation? Chair, I think we need researchers to go back to the drawing board. The rainfall they've changed. It is no longer like we are receiving rain, first rain in August. It has completely changed. So those researchers, we need them to go back to the drawing board and research thoroughly so. Now, going back to this commission, Chair, you spoke of, it is so easy for people to cluster the civil society. They will say civil society, and who is civil society? In civil society, they will just take anyone. And Bamubemo Bare will represent the civil society. Yet, Runako agriculture, most of the time, we are not even looked upon. I know when they say civil, then they would take someone, or has got qualifications or has got connections. Chair, it is about the salary now. So we want we want to register, or that has to come to an end. Let us not consider our retofaba to the salaries. We're making a job opportunity. And that is why we start selling Pili, because of those job opportunities. When we say civil society, let us divide that civil society. Farmers are also included there. It can be a high-profile commission, Chair. This thing affects all of us. The first speaker also spoke about role of municipalities. I am worried, Chair, how this is gonna go about. Are municipalities skilled enough to be able to make that analysis of climate change? I'm worried. And I want to challenge municipalities to say, involve those farmers, involve civil societies. Liska libella fela because ke masipala re tla tsa mamang re mo kenye re metso we will still suffer, Chair. So it is climate change. Now we have to change our methodology of doing things. Those IDPs, Chair, we will want to see climate change being discussed in those IDPs. We need to adapt in a true sense. Now, I just want to pose maybe a political question, even though I'm not a politician. Some countries have already declared or they will impose sanctions, If this country, I'm not gonna go any further. However, how are those sanctions going to affect this adaptation to climate change? Will we be still belong to that community? Those countries, the first world, that has caused us this mess. So if sanctions are being imposed to us, how are we going to go about? And coming to the second presentation, I want to commend the Department of Agriculture. Some of the things that we have seen, being presented here, we've seen them live. The solar systems, I think the department has started already, but then they have to speed it up because we're suffering GDART. So the pace, we need you to accelerate a little bit. Limoteng Chair, there will be a committee. I think with the department, yes, they've announced that they've appointed already, but whom have you appointed? Did you go down? Whom have you appointed? So we are posing that question. And you spoke about taking the awareness to the school level, which we commend. However, it's not only the schools. I think we need education. The communities need education. Right now, if you can go around, because people are hungry, you find that go na le ba rekisang ditlhogo. A ke ra itse batho ba rekisang ditlhogo, they also contribute to the green gas. Because ba besa mollo ka mashala. How do we curb that? Because our people are hungry and we cannot stop them from cooking ditlhogo tseo because ra di rata, ra di ja. But it becomes a problem also. Now, we need education. We need education. Also, talking about the maize that I've highlighted on earlier on, we need to change the diet. If it's not maize, can we then talk about potatoes? Can you then talk about yam? Can we then, if maize is being affected, let's talk about something else. Let's change the diet. And technology, Chair. We need usage of technology. And that's where GDAST now comes in having this big budget of helping farmers. We need to change. Le rona as farmers, we need to look after the ecosystem. Because if we rely on ecosystem, then there won't be any future for our children. I thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. Maybe just to indicate, Baholo, I think you've had a workshop. Those who were invited to the workshop in the legislature about how to deal with this bill would have attended. We're focusing on the bill so that we're being productive. Let's not be all over the place. And I know there are issues that you would want to raise with the department, and I'm sure you always get a platform to do that. Every time the department, you have an opportunity to raise your dissatisfactions and the issues they want to raise with the department. And unfortunately, not all members of the department are here to listen to that. But as and when we create that platform, we get the whole department to come, including the MEC, so that they can take those issues on board. But let's focus on the bill so that we improve and, populate something, say, long, all of us will be happy to see on the final act of law. Thank you very much. You can go ahead, Mama.
Okay. Now, Nikina, just one question. So, I covered from the previous speaker. So, I accept because Kito Arabia still. Thank you.
Thank you, Mama. That's very progressive.
Okay, libisula kake malibisa Selina Smelan concern yaka because of Kimo Ward Committee. So the previous speaker on weekends I'll be sorted.
Thank you, Radeboha. Olatelang.
Good morning. My name is Chief Enver Chelan. I'm the chairperson of Ubuntu Community Development. We are in agreement with the climate change bill, but if we look at it in the sense that educational, there's most of our communities, just as the chair said, that all of us are involved. But as it is, it seems that it's just certain sections that gets involved, and other sections, they do be forgotten. So my question to the Department of Agriculture and as GDAT, I listen to all what they are saying, but the implementation plan which we do not see the implementation plan, and whereby educational, whereby we can teach our people based on what is climate change and what is the destructiveness of climate change if we do not act positively to create a sustainable and living environment. There's only one thing I wanted to have clarity based on, is the Presidential Climate Commission. The Presidential Climate Commission, I do believe there's a lot of people that do not understand what the Presidential Climate Commission stands for. But the functions of it is to come down to we as the community and people down on the ground. As we know that climate change is destroying. First things first, based on GDAT's report that they gave now, they are in the process of planting around about 1 million trees. They are in the process of installing solar systems, water systems. But if you look in our area, just right here in Soweto, I'm staying next to Shawela. If we look in that area, we do not have JoJo tanks, we do not have nothing. Solar systems and those are not being brought to our community. Therefore, we as the upcoming farmers of today, we are struggling with climate change because we do not know how to handle it. So therefore, I would ask the chair and to GDAT to please be actively involved and effectively so that we can make a change within our area based on what you said, because your time frames of implementation, your accountability to what we experience is not what we expected. So please, if we can just, all of us, come together with the legislature, the departments and all that, and start doing workshops within the community so that they can also understand the importance of why we host these climate change events, so that we can, for our future generations, that they can plant, that they can produce what we produce and live forward. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay. Ngicela ukunibulisa nonke igama ngoPortia wakaMakhathini. I'm from Jabavu, ngisebenza nomphakathi. I should be standing here today to say fully I do not adopt the bill. But fortunately, when I came in, although I arrived late, the presentation that was given, it was actually giving sense. But still, that doesn't rub the concerns that we have as a community. I'm not gonna deliberate it so much because one of the sisters over here has actually spoken about it. The education is very important. Effective education, more especially to people on the ground. We are actually at the branch level of organizations. So we interact with the community so much. And it gives us actually a serious concern when things happen and we are not part of them from the inception of any undertaking. Yes, from the table you may say that we have done other processes and then we have selected people according to whatsoever that has been given. But most people who actually needs this information, they are not part of the process. So if you can take that into consideration. Yes, you're speaking also about the implementation that has to be accelerated. There's commissioners, there's this and that. We hope when we endorse this bill, we're not going to be taken for a ride. It will be done according to for a good cause. Because people, as it has been said, also that we need to drive less. Here in South Africa, that is not our conception to drive less. Everyone wants to work, buy a car and see themselves driving on the road. And according to keep the environment clean, that is against. So those are little things that we need. You need to come forward and teach us about them. Because really, what is happening already in other provinces, yes, I might not be directly affected as I'm staying in Soweto, the floods, whatsoever, it's happening in Natan, now it's hitting also Mpumalanga. We worry as well when it comes to us. How far are you preventing the floods? How far are you preventing the environment to keep it clean? So that when things come to us, they might not be as hard as it hits Durban, as much as it hits Mpumalanga. So those are things that we really would love to see that you do. And even if there's posts coming from the environment department, I'm not sure whether they're existing, you call it edusters or you call them what. We don't know who are these people or these organizations that are being called, because people apply but they don't get any response whatsoever. So these are things that we are requesting you with a good plan when we adopt this again, as I'm standing here, that things will be done for a good cause. We don't want to live in fear. The resilience will be faced with a country that we don't have food. As other people have also tap on that, the farming also it becomes a problem. So may you be leaders that take care of us. I'll just keep up to that point.
Thank you, Arabafem Matsoho, thank you very much. Ke rata mantswe wa hao, the last speaker, creating awareness and education and the involvement of everyone, especially the youth. And I know in other countries, they've got what we call climate change activists. Much as you are activists in your own right, in whatever organizations that you belong to, or whatever social club, as the community, as civic society, you've got the responsibility to take this challenge upon yourself. Liberty activists that climate change, frown against those people who litter, but dumping waste as and when they want, those that cut trees, but deforest our beautiful country, but cut on the corner, but it's the sculptures, we need to be aware of those things and the wrongs that we are doing in the environments that we stay in. And sometimes you can create that awareness yourself by educating yourself about these things and become an activist in your own community, in your own street. You can educate people who stays around you. Huriman, let's take care of our environment. And then once you do it, and then it spreads to other areas. That's how we learn as people. Monkey see, monkey do. We do. This thing, it's unacceptable as South Africans. We need to know how to get rid of waste and make wealth out of this waste. Yarona. Hona lo hore re littare environment yarona. We are not, decent human beings. Yet we are, and we love ourselves. But the environment, quite frankly, sometimes it's our own fault. We need to take responsibility as active citizens, ba patriotic, ba ratang South Africa. Thank you very much. I'll come this side and take hands. Mama, you can come to the front. One. Any other person? This side at the back, you can come. Okay, 2 hands this side. And then my extreme left, Lonaba Fikile Morahu. Is there anyone who wants to say something there? Yeah, you can come. Okay, so only 3 hands. Okay, Omo. Okay. Okay, yeah, you can come up. Marakamo Fedite, Bahulu. I said, I gave out a brainwave. I took hands this side, there were 6 hands. And then I come to this side now. We must work according to the rules of the legislature. We don't just do things haphazardly. I noted hands Kamo, Babuleze. Now I've noted hands come. Because if I can open now, we will not finish this meeting. And we would not achieve our objectives. We are going to end up talking about everything else but climate change. So I've noted those hands. You can start, Mama.
Sanbonani, ngizothanda ukubulisa ngesintu sasekhaya. If I want to express myself fully, ngiyangithanda ukukhuluma my mother tongue. Baza interpreter ba interpretayo. Igama lami ngobusisiwe Nkwanyana. And also my chairperson, angazi noma mhlambe azange bakutshela ukuthi khona woman in agriculture, because you mentioned amanye stakeholders, but you didn't mention woman in agriculture. I'm worried because we are the ones
aba affectekayo kakhulu and sisebenza hand in hand nayo i-department ye-agriculture, but it seems as if we are not acknowledged. Ngize ke kule yazi ibhlungu indaba yama reports ne. Every time we come here but sizwa amanga. Leyo nto leyo, it's so sad that whatever that is reported, most of the things Tina asizazi, we didn't see those things. And as agriculture Tina, we are not invited and say farmers be the part and play a role with some of the things. I'm sorry to say some of the things as a report, I mean, angifuni uqamba amanga azange ngizizwe even na noma senza ama meetings wethu. We are not at all acknowledged by the Lentuzan when it comes to la on the structure say level le ngathi nje ku region or kuma branches, as UCC has indicated, ukuthi we need to be there effectively. So ngoba you indicated also ukuthi there will be people or there are people abasebenza currently in a premier, but we don't know those people ukuthi abobani. It's unfair ukuthi Tina every time, especially Tina we are the people aba mobilizayo, aba coordinators, our legislature, but we are not acknowledged. And also siqale la masiqeda ukugcwala lana makuza izinto ukuthi fanele ukuthi Thina sebe involved kuzo kuthathwa abantu nje from nowhere esingabazi or mhlambe bafunde kakhulu baqoka amajazi. Nathi sifundile at our own space. We are educated. Mina nje ngubusisiwe, I've got management in agriculture. Ngiyabonga. And I've got a national certificate in poultry. So ngeke ngizibale zonke. Then my point ukuthi legislature ngicela ukuthi masiza la ne sizele. Last time we came here na presenter and we had ukuthi sithole feedback, but instead of sithole feedback kuza enye futhi portfolio committee meeting. Uyayibona into enjalo ukuthi it looks like siyama window dressers thina phela nje ukuthi niza nezinto senizi implementile maniqeda bese kuyathina mele sizoshaya izandla and we are not there. It's unfair. And izoqhubeka until nini leyo nto. Siya ku 2014 manje. We are going for elections. So but we are busy playing ngathi. And environment, there was a meeting I heard about my sister there, Uguti. There was a climate change I called today. We had a climate change workshop, I think it was at Braamfontein in 2010, long before Iba Konamanj. So, Gushuti Gyalhalwanj, climate change. And Amanja Gudlalong wrong. You are playing with something dangerous because now it's affecting us directly. Directly so. In case at end, there are floods and there are people, they're staying in the hall or wherever. Their houses and everything are damaged by the climate change. So njalo nje kukhulunywa nge-climate change, but there's no initiative or something tangible eyenzakalayo. Instead kuzothathwa abantu nezihlobo baziyofakwa le kuthiwa zipresent or zirepresenta i-climate change, whereas thina farmers esishiswa ilanga we are working under the sun for nothing, guys. You can plant your maize, as my sister has indicated. Uguti, we've got a maize and we plant, and if we want to harvest, we are supposed to harvest. There's no harvest. Because of what? Because of this climate change. The floods, they take everything. Because we don't even have the tunnels. This is promissoire. This is that. Maguzi budget. But come budget, good benefit people, even abangayazi nokuyazi agriculture. I must say it. Mina, I'm 57 years. Bengasho mina empilweni yami ukuthi by at this age ngizobe ngisabhizi ngehla ngigalavanta up and down planting with smaller scale, subsistence scale, communal scale. No, we want to be commercial farmers. Please, sicela ukuthi department yeke ukudlala ngathi basinike what belongs to us. Really. Ngoba ku climate change is the same thing. Ku agriculture is the same thing. Ku intonton is the same thing. I'm going to say it. We have voted for foreigners to benefit our rights. Ibhlungu leyo nto leyo ngoba bona they benefit. And noma ngahamba athi uyoplanta lapha akekho ozombuzwa ukuthi iphi permit. But mina ithi ngiyaplanta la ngizofuna ipermit. Khona manje we are busy with cannabis. Cannabis besinayo afasa. Can you just
Mama, can I call order?
Okay.
The speaker is calling
All
order
right,
now.
thank you. What I'm
Please
saying
remain
is
relevant.
that, okay, I'm relevant, but I've got issues. Oguguti, this is a platform. Ekumele ukuthi sikhuluma ama issues wethu. Angithi khona manje ngithi ngikhuluma mina ngendaba yokuthi masifuna ukuyoplanta fanele sifuna ama permit and what izinto eziningi. Mara ama foreigners they do whatever. And yona le lentuzana global lentuzana pollution ikostwa yibo futhi. Yibo ngoba bakhanda imoto abana permit abana nix babaqeda bona futhi they take oil all over the place. Tina, we need to fight them and they threaten us. Who are we to come and tell them not to do this and do that? Because they've got right and it they go wherever and they get whatever. So it's about time, guys. Uguti indaba yama foreigners angisho ukuthi xenophobic, but it's unfair. Bathola imisebenzi, bathola yonke into ama farms. Masingaphuma manje siyele eRandfontein, siye Western Era, abagcwele bathola ama farms. Thina sina ama farms. So department, sicela ukuthi nisebenze kahle ngefair. Siyacela and mina bayangizonda ne. Bangizondela iqiniso and mina nginandaba nokuthi bayangizonda. Ngoba every time khuluma iqiniso. Ngikhuluma iqiniso. If it costs us ukuthi senze night vigil, chairperson, sizoyenza night vigil for our rights. For our rights. Mina ngizovota, ngivotela iANC. Everybody knows ukuthi ubusisiwe iANC. Mara iANC yangifela mina ngubusisiwe. Ngoba ngivotela ama foreigners ukuthi athola umsebenzi, athola yonke into la eSouth Africa. Thina singatholi nix. It's about time ukuthi UN, bana United Nations or yini bahlangane babuyisela ama foreigners ezweni labo ukuthi bakwazi ukuthi babatholela imisebenzi.
Your time is up. Thank you very much. Your time is up. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay,
Thank you.
In whatever project that you are doing, please engage us. Singers want you
Mama, respect the chair, please. Thank you. Thank you very much, Mama, for respecting the chair. Let me first say that apologies for not acknowledging you, but I am informed that you have been invited and you were also part of the workshop that took place that I spoke to. And you always attend our meetings, our public participation meetings. Even in the previous two bills that we don't respond to me, give me time to listen to me. Even in the two previous bills that we interacted with, the natural forest bill and the fire bill, you were part and you made your inputs heard. And I did request for the decorum of the House, let's stick to the bill at hand. You do have an opportunity now and again to interact with the department, the full House, by the way, the full complement with all the EDs, the MEC, the HOD, mandating in those meetings where you have an opportunity to raise the issues that you are raising. I'm not saying they are not genuine, but they are irrelevant for this platform. You are telling the wrong audience because National will not do anything about those things that you are raising. They require the Gauteng department did that to deal with them. And Rena as the portfolio committee, we listen to the community and we hold the department accountable. We always stand for you as the members of the public, for the department to do the right things by you. So don't worry, Mama. Your issues are ahead. Let's proceed to the next speaker.
Sanbonani. Nkulumela phansi ne? Sanbonani. Igama lami Mthapseng. I'm just a community member. Right. So I have a question
from the first speaker, Ubaba Lapaya. Gupili yakhe, he spoke about creating jobs. And so for me, I'm a youth. Also, there's a youth. Ngiyabona kugcwele abantu abadala kakhulu lana ekhaya, mhlambe abantwana basesikoleni. However, bazothatha information bayise ebantwaneni, right? So, we don't get information as youth, kakhulu, especially if you don't have equipments like boma laptops, your computers, and your smartphones, right? So for abantwana mhlawumbe abafuna ukufunda, the jobs that you're going to create, what kind of jobs are you going to create, number one? Secondly, what qualifications are needed for them to, if unyasugalana, I'm doing my grade 8, I'm going to my grade 12, niyenza ipi qualification so that ngizongena nami ku-industry efana nalena. Because also, even if information, I heard people talking about information, ukuthi ingafika elokishini and then singasizana in the local places. But sisizana kanjani if I don't have the relevant information from phezulu engizoyifikisa phansi. Yeah, so yeah. And then my second question is about, okay, the second speaker was speaking about planting trees. Mina ngokwami, I've seen a lot. From my experience, I've seen people abazayo bafake ihlahla elokishini, but ezinye ihlahla they get destroyed. In that case, siluthola kanjani usizo in that department? Umnikazi wendlu la nifake khona ihlahla, is that person should be responsible of that tree, or is the department yona ngokwayo emele ukuthi be responsible for leso sihlahla? Because ngiyathatha umntwana wami ngiyamthuma esitoro, before afike esitoro abantwana bayadlala bakhahlela lezo ihlahla leso and they get destroyed, right? Dala abantu bakudala, they were very responsible of the trees. Mezihlala manje niyaplanta and then you live like that. From now on, yini ningayenza ukuthi lezo ihlahla lezo at least zihlale zi-maintained? And then ngizwile bakhuluma ngokuthi ukulahlela amaphepha. Those things, they affect us. Upche ngizwile khuluma ngokuthi sizosizana as njengama those people take charge. They responsible of making sure that the crime is alleviated. Now, masifika kundaba yokulahlela udoti. Kunabantu abalahlela udoti noma kuphi iganga bazicreate labona. In that case, can we also get abantu abazothi maseqoqiwe kuleyo ndawo every day abantu bayaqoqa, like kunabantu abayenza umsebenzi wabo bayathatha ama plastic every day. But how do you eliminate the fact that even tomorrow I wake up in the same thing, the smell of the dogs, the smell of udoti ijaridini lam? I might be responsible, but I teach the next person to be responsible, but ngimkhuza kanjani if uzohlala yenza ngaso sonke isikhathi? Thank you so much.
Felix, go, Mama.
Okay. Sanbonani. Lokhulumayo uNkosi Mabaso, chairperson we-Contralesa ku-province for abomama. Anginakho nje okuningi engakukhuluma in terms of la eGauteng ngoba inkinga vele umhlaba yiwo lo singanawo. Okunye futhi indawo yethu it's overpopulated. Lokho causa air pollution kakhulu. Inkinga enginayo ama-informal settlements. La excess nenkinga khona ukuthi abanye abantu abanagesi. So once abantu bengenawo ugesi kulezo indawo lezo bagcina bebasa phansi. Uthi mawudlula nje ngakulezo indawo, example la ngase Kliptown uthole kumnyama kuvala intuthu. So izinto ezinjalo senze njani, ugovernment wenze njani ukuthi asizane nabantu ukuthi mhlambe bonke abantu baze bawuthola ugesi. And okunye okubuye kukhose still ukuthi noma ugesi sebenawo abanye ngesikhathi se-load shedding ngoba ihamba kakhulu ugesi bagcina futhi bebasa. Leyo nto leyo iyamosha kakhulu. Bese kuba nendaba yokuthi indawo zama-informal settlements noma abomasipala bekhona amakhansela kodwa azinakekanga kahle. Uthola kugcwele amanzi phansi engcolisa umhlaba, ama-sewage awanakwa, abantu bayagula because of lezo zinto lezo. Sicela ukuthi nina ni Department of Agriculture and Land ningenelele kulokho. Kunisebenze because thina singamakhosi siwubukhosi siyazi ukuthi umhlaba yinto ebalekile kakhulu kithi ngoba umhlabathi yinto ukuthi ingubo yethu noma ubani meseshonile emhlabathini. So if thina singezukuhlonipha umhlabathi into lokuthi yiyo yokuthwala ngelanga lokugcina. So kufanele kakhulu sihloniphe umhlabathi nalabantu abanye abanokuhamba bayemfuleni bayoyenza ama rituals wabo nabo imvelo bayayihlukumeza. Yingakho sesithola siba nama floods. Asihlonipheni lezo zinto asisho ukuthi abantu bangayenzi izinto zabo zesintu. Kodwa noma sebeyile kuleyo mfula abaqoqe phela udoti wabo bahambe nawo. La uzokhona ukuthi ushiseke khona kungabe nje sekugcwele zonke izinto lapho. Siyacela ukuthi ke kube neawareness ebantwini emphakathini ngoba lento ekhona namhlanje abantu abaningi emalokishini abasayazi. Umuntu uyalahla nje iphepha kanandaba akazi ukuthi limosha kuphi kusasa. Okunye kokugcina ngicela ukuthi abantu basizakale kunokuthi kube nama floods. Akhona ama floods kakhulu la eGauteng. Ngisebenza kakhulu nama hostel. Boma nasifili abantu bayamuke ayangena amanzi. Bathuthe bayohlaliswa emaholweni. Uphela unyaka kumelwa kuze kubuye omunye unyaka kube nama floods futhi. Bafike bazo udepartment bazoshutha izithombe bathi sizolungisa u1 no2 kodwa kungenzakala. Sicela ukuthi abantu nabo balungiselelwe kulezo zinto. Ngiyabonga.
Thank you, siyabonga. Inkosi yethu, thank you so much. I'm told that khona le batho ba bang ba batla the inputs and suggestions, ne? So I'll open for only 2. It's okay. The 2 gentlemen, they can just make their quick inputs. Ke kopa iskaba story, ne? Just make your inputs straight to the point, and then we can allow the departments to respond. Over to you, Papa. Introduce yourself first.
Oh, lebitso la ka ke nna Mohau Mtelana le leng sefane ke Ramarok. Ke mona ke a ke tsela ho bua ka mbate ke a bona ho bua ka agriculture ke ikenetse ke feta fela so ke bua ke ikenetse ke feta maybe ke ta go khola ka pa ke ma ke bona ke agriculture se ken so re kopa government e retsetse hore lenywe dikolong ho lenywe batho ba fuwe mosebetsi batho ba banyane ba fuwe mosebetsi ho tletse batho ba baholo mo batho ba banyane ba tletse kwa mara ba batla di 350 government ya retsetse ke lebo
Papa ra leboga efa o mong wa bobedi.
Good afternoon, good morning, colleagues. Thank you, Chair, for giving me an opportunity to present the views. My name is Ngopurim Patlele. I'm from Busa, Business Unity, South Africa. So I'm here on behalf of organized business community. So with regards to the climate change bill, we are an active stakeholder, ensuring that the bill becomes an effective tool in response to climate change. So my main inputs gonna relate to the carbon budget. So we understand that the Department of Forestry is in the process of developing the carbon budget regulations. But our concern is that there must be an alignment between the carbon budget and carbon tax. So currently there's no clear alignment between the 2 tools. So we would like to see that alignment, and we also don't want to, our other concern relates to the double taxation between the carbon budget and the carbon tax. So currently, there is a tax within and below the carbon budget. So our concern is that double penalty between the 2 tools, and there must be clear alignment on the methodologies. So in establishing the carbon budget, some of the principles that we see in the alignment between the 2 tools is they must take into account historic mitigation, forward-looking mitigation potential, national circumstances. And the other principle that must be taken into account when developing the carbon budget is available to technological solutions, availability of green financing, and also taking into account the trading of carbon offsets. So there must also be a transparent process to amend the carbon budget if natural circumstances and the market condition change such an amendment. So the other concern that we have is it relates to criminal sanction. So we don't necessarily believe that there must be some criminal sanctions when one exceed the carbon budget. So already there's some company rights stipulated in the environmental authorizations. So those are my input that I would like to provide. I'm happy to share more detailed input in written submission. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I'm sure we'll appreciate the written submission as well. It will really assist. Thank you very much. At this stage, I will give the department an opportunity then to respond to all the inputs that were made, or the comments that were made by the stakeholders. Over to you.
Thank you, Chair. And good afternoon, members of the community. To assist with maybe I should first thank the speakers for the invaluable contributions that you've made. The point I wanted to emphasize is that you must appreciate that currently as a country we don't have an act dealing with climate change issues at all. So my view would be that let's support this bill, ensure that it is in place. Then over time we'll see, of course it won't be perfect, as this is our first attempt at regulating this aspect. Then maybe 5 years down the line we'll see from benefit of hindsight or from our experience from implementing the act, we'll see which areas can be fixed at that stage. But our priority now should be to have this act enacted as soon as possible, so that at least we have something in place. Then in terms of the first speaker, I think she raised quite a few points. The first point was around representation in the commission. As I said, when I was presenting, this aspect was quite contentious. It received huge interest when we were consulting within the portfolio committee. So we really try to balance all the interest when crafting the clauses relating to the commission. But around the issue of representatives, you will notice if you read the specific clause 10, I would try to make it more robust and accommodative to ensure that it accommodates everyone. If you look at the way it's crafted, it is more open-ended. I know some might say it creates ambiguity, but sometimes you need ambiguity if you want to create some balance and accommodate as many stakeholders as possible. For example, in the list of members who must be in the commission, we are using the wording including but not limited to. That is intentional such that we have a closed list of the people who must be in the commission. It must be open as possible to accommodate all. So I think that's the first point. Of course, we've listed certain groupings: business, organized labor, civil society, SALGA, traditional leaders. But we could not really, it was not really possible to have an itemized list of all the people or stakeholders who could serve in that commission, hence the open-ended wording in certain parts. But civil society is mentioned there. We also grappled with that concept, and that your concern was registered as well, to say, who is civil society? Do you want us to define that concept? If you define it, to what extent do you go? Because even in the definition, that definition must be inclusive. But our thinking was that referencing civil society should be sufficient, and that wording should be taken in its ordinary sense, should be interpreted in its ordinary sense to say it should be any grouping within society that is organized and possibly registered with the applicable legislation, including the NPO Act. What we emphasize is that we should be dealing with people who are organized. That's the best take. But to say, well, let's define it then, maybe something that we can consider as your submission, and maybe the committee will then see how best to define it, if it must be defined. But we thought, let's keep it open so that we can accommodate everyone. What you will note that also is that the commission won't be composed only of the commissioners. The commission is enabled to create committees. Those committees, I think if you look at, I'm not sure of the clause now, but those are listed. Committees that may be created. There will be a committee on environmental aspect that will consider all environmental aspects. A committee that will deal with mitigation issues. Committee on finance. Committee on legal aspects. But even that clause, we've kept it open to say, and any other committee that the commission will deem relevant at the right time. So, as your organization, you may find, if you, for example, you feel that you are not represented at the commission's level, maybe we can then be represented at the committee at that technical level, so that all your issues are addressed. So we've tried to really accommodate everyone. But as I said, it won't be perfect now because this is our first attempt. But let's just make sure that the bill is put in place. Then you address the issues of civil society. But what is key as well is that the people who are appointed there, you should hold them accountable, because what people normally do, they just appoint people there. Once people are occupying offices, then they will do as they please. Then it should be incumbent on all the members of society to keep those people who are appointed in check, whether they are in the commission or the committees. I think you also mentioned the role of municipalities. We acknowledge that point. In fact, in my presentation, I highlighted their role in terms of conducting the needs assessments, generating the plans, ensuring that the plans are, the response plans are integrated within the IDPs, and also that they are enabled to tap into the resources that minister will provide through that finance support and finance mechanism. But we take your point, and the municipalities are central in this bill. In terms of sanctions by the big players, the first world countries, I'm not sure if I'm competent to deal with that, but I think we acknowledge that, we appreciate that climate change happens within a global context, but all those kind of decisions or discussions take place through the COPs within the United Nations system. So I think as a country, we have a well-competent Ministry of International Relations. We can then advance our position in relation to our position as a country as against other countries. The issue of education was mentioned a lot. In my presentation, I highlighted that there were certain functionaries that were listed in Schedule 1 and 2. The inputs received within the portfolio committee was that some functionaries, including education, are missing. So if you look at the bill now, education is 1 and 2 as one of the departments of functionaries that must take the necessary measures, put programs in place to drive climate change considerations. Chair, I think those are the issues I managed to pick up. There was an issue on the jobs. I mentioned jobs within the context of explaining the meaning of just transition. To say by just transition, we mean that as a country, as we move away from carbon-intensive, from a carbon-intensive economy or systems or activities, let's make sure that we are not leaving anyone behind. We must move in one pace as a country. In moving away from those carbon-intensive industries, I made an example of coal. We must make sure that we preserve, we do everything in our power to preserve the jobs that are there, and create new jobs. That was the context within which I was explaining the aspect of jobs. Because within the Mpumalanga area, there's concerns that the coal mines will close. What must then happen to the coal miners? So government, in this just transition, must ensure that those coal miners are catered for. The companies, the responsible companies must either upskill them, retrain them, and redeploy them elsewhere. But there must be intervention to make sure that those people don't lose their jobs. They are able to retain their jobs, and we create new jobs through the new initiatives. For example, the solar interventions, the green economy interventions. Those interventions must create new jobs. So that was the context within I was explaining the issue of jobs. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Let's allow the department to do that, to respond.
Thank you very much, Chair. And thank you to the community members for raising those critical inputs. I will attempt to answer your questions, and if I miss anything, my colleague, Mr. Matthew Sibonejo, will also come and also attempt to respond to your inputs and questions. Responding to the first one that was raised by Mama Tembi with regards to the pace of the implementation of the implementation plan that we have developed as the department. So as I indicated during the presentation, it was approved by the Provincial Exco in 2020. So we have only implemented it for about 3 years. And if you go through the implementation plan, you will see there are various programs that we have outlined there that we are still going to implement, so that at the end of the day, you see a difference on the ground. And with the funding that he alluded to in the bill, that the minister will make provision for funding so that provinces and municipalities will be empowered to implement the bill comprehensively. That will make a huge difference. That we welcome that even when we were deliberating with the department. You also touched on the Premier's Expert Advisory Committee on Climate Change to say who has been appointed, who is serving in that committee. By the direction of Premier, it is only experts from different sectors that are serving on that committee, advising us so that we can be able to accelerate the implementation of the implementation plan that we have developed. But that does not limit members of communities to participate in terms of the work that we are doing. There are various platforms in place that we have established that enable you to be able to make your inputs and participate. A case in point, the Climate Change Forum, where we invite community members as well. Also, on a yearly basis, we host what we call Gauteng Climate Change Indaba, where we invite various sectors, members of communities, NGOs, including farmers. We had one last year where we partnered with UNISA. It was hosted in Pretoria. So I can also take your details after the meeting so that we are able to include you in our stakeholder database, so that when such events arise, you can be part of. Chair of Ubuntu raised an issue of awareness that it must go beyond schools. Indeed, we agree with that fact. In our plans, we have also outlined the fact that we need to go beyond schools and engage communities with regards to issues of climate change, because communities need to be equipped to be in a better position to can respond to some of the effects that we highlighted when we were presenting. So that has been duly noted, and it shall be implemented even in the next financial year. Ms. Portia Makatini from Jabavu also raised the issue of awareness. So I've already responded to that. And the issue of waste. I think the chair indicated indicated the importance to create wealth from waste. And we duly commend the work that is being done by the waste pickers in our communities. They are doing an amazing work. So we must take advantage of these opportunities. And there are waste pickers in different communities that we can make use of in terms of ensuring that we participate in the circular economy. Women in agriculture. I think what I have noted from you, Mama, when you were making your input here, is that there's a need for us as the department to have a workshop aimed at equipping the farmers, particularly the smallholder farmers, because projections indicate that they will suffer more loss with respect to effects of climate change. So there is a need for us to engage that particular group because we have what we call smart agriculture, where you undertake your operations in such a way that you will not be adversely affected by the effects of climate change. But it requires a workshop where we will have spend maybe 3 to 4 hours and equip you comprehensively as to how can you respond effectively to the effects of climate change from the agricultural sector. And I've also noted from your input, you talked about tunnels provision. I'm from the department, but not from the agricultural section. So I will take your details and liaise with the relevant officials and see if they can be of assistance to you. Mentabi Singh, you spoke about planting of trees, the maintenance plan. I think your input was mostly around the maintenance plan to say, do we maintain the trees that we have planted? We have developed the maintenance plan as part of the greening program, but obviously it is not possible for us to go to each and every tree of the 1 million that we have planted to check how the tree is doing. So what we have done is that we have planted the shade trees in schools so that schools can take care of them. Fruit trees, we have planted them in households so that the people that are owning those households can take care of those trees. We have also planted trees in parks, and it is the responsibility of a relevant municipality to ensure that such trees that have been planted in parks are maintained. Nkosi Mabaso, Chair of Contralesa, spoke about provision of power and also waste challenges in terms of sewage and so forth. I think, Chair, when we were having the pre-hearing workshop, the Chair then indicated that for service delivery issues, community members are encouraged to liaise with their relevant councillors and municipalities so that they can get assistance. But we have noted the concern and we will be able to take the matters to the relevant institutions and departments. With regards to the issue of water pollution, particularly with respect to cultural practices, I think there's a need for an awareness with regards to that so that members of the community take care of natural systems that are at their disposal. But also, I think we also need help from the traditional leaders as well as councillors to create that necessary awareness on the ground as to ensure that our community members do not pollute our rivers, our wetlands, because these are very important. These systems, natural systems, are very important in terms of climate change adaptation. If our rivers are effective, if our wetlands are effective, we will have less effects of climate change. It means they are in a position to be able to make us not to realize a lot of effects from climate change. If the rivers are in good conditions, the wetlands and all these systems. We need to take care of them so that they can also give back to us. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Big round of applause for the two departments. Ra leboga. I will now invite members of the Portfolio Committee to just make their closing remarks or comments with regard to the session that we have held. I'll start with Member Ndlovu.
Thank you very much, Chairperson, for that. We welcome the presentations, both from national and province. The observation, Chair, is that the people of Gauteng are not antagonistic towards the bill. Because what brought us here today was to speak about issues of the bill. We've noted issues as raised by community members, but none amongst ourselves has rejected the bill. But people have made additions generally to the bill. But of importance, we must welcome the interventions done by the government of Gauteng in participating in the climate change itself. I mean, the presentation tells us how we built our smart cities is a contribution towards the climate change. The use of solar is a contribution towards the climate change. In Gauteng, we had transformers that are stolen, which had then caused our people to go back to wood, causing more damage to the climate. We are in the process of replacing those solars in the province. The Premier every week is installing a transformer somewhere. This is all in a view to make the weather and the climate better. We know the solar that we're speaking about. I mean, the government is looking for land in Western where they are going to build a farm solar. All these things are a contribution to making sure that we do our part in the Paris Agreement. But of importance, Chair, is what we must then do going back to our communities. I think the government ought to do more on civic education. You know, there are minor things that we take light, like leaving a globe on for a long time when you are not using it. It produces a certain level of carbon dioxide, which then leads to this climate change that we are speaking about. When you don't change your tire of the car, when it needs to be changed. Our communities need to learn about those things so that every little role that anyone can play at home, then we do so. I mean, do we know that if you don't use too much water, too much hot water, you are assisting in the climate change, because the usage of hot water itself, it produces a certain kilograms of carbon dioxide, and it's the same carbon dioxide that we are speaking about that we need to deal with. So of importance, I think the researchers must do more, but the main important part is for government to go down to communities and teach them of what roles can we play as citizens to make our country better and
areas of interest. I really thank all of you. Ke lebogele the staff that helped to put this together, and all of you who did the interpretation for us, the media people, honorable members, ba e leng gore ba tshwaragane le tiro e thata to make sure that things happen. There's a lot that is happening behind the scenes which you might not know about, and some of the things Lidi raised them, but because we were not here to discuss them, we could not, dwell deeper into them. But across our country, like I said, these public participation meetings are taking place everywhere. Northern Cape, Eastern Cape, all our provinces. And I'm sure as South Africans, we are facing similar challenges. The challenges are not in most areas, differ there and there, the region in terms of our geographic location. But all these inputs are going to help shape this piece of law, of legislation. And I'm sure when it comes into effect, most of you will be happy and proud to say, I was part of this process and I made my contribution, and I'm seeing the fruits of it. Unfortunately, like I'm saying, lawmaking, it's a process. It's a legal process. The lawyer, they must look at it, the gaps, everything is done according to plan. So there can't be the shortcuts during this process. We need to be very thorough in engaging the process. So thank you very much for your indulgence, and every time we call you as our stakeholders, you will be available. And I think the department has said that if you want to register as a stakeholder, so that in future the department who invite, because I know they're doing a lot out there, because our province is a bit vast. Maybe abaso fitlhelele where you are. But if you can follow them on their website and on Facebook and on YouTube, you would see the kind of work they are trying to do. It might not be enough, but if you could register with them, so that whenever they've got programs in your area, you also get invited and you get to interact more with the Department of Agriculture, Rural Development, and the Environment. I think that's a big take for me from this meeting, if you are going to take new stakeholders so that they can be part of the stakeholders of the department. So thank you very much. Ke tlo kopa gore di gadgets tse, those that receive the gadgets, please don't take them with you. Take them back so that they can be reused for other subsequent meetings. Thank you very much, honorable members. I'm told lunch is served outside. Okay, yeah, as you leave the hall on the side on my left, you can use this exit and then you can get your share of lunch. So on that note, I would like to declare this meeting officially closed. Thank you. Thank you very much. Oh, let's calibala submission deadline for those written submissions which we are expecting. Kidi 22 March, ne? Yes.